everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Otaku Nightly Hour. Now, this isn't exactly going to be a shower thought or like a full blown episode, but we'll see how it goes. I'm here today with Raptor, of course.
Hi. Hello. I am human.
And we're gonna take a little stroll through memory lane of our own experiences as watchers of anime and just media viewers in general. And the question today pops in is how different has our taste changed from watching animes and shows we used to watch when we were younger to now? Like, have things shifted, or has something like completely gone, or things track along the way, kind of thing? So, the first part of it is like obviously has our taste matured as we grew older and such like that. Like, did we go from like along the lines of liking the same similar stuff or going to more like thought-provoking related shows and such? I
Um,
I like to think I might have matured in my taste since growing up, or at least like how I take in the material, you know what I mean?
how you choose to interpret the content you consume or what?
I suppose what I mean is like from a first viewing and such, because I definitely for sure when I was a kid I just watched like, oh, here there's this cool action scene and stuff like that kind of thing. Like I remember specifically growing up with Teen Titans, like OG Teen Titans, and not taking in like the bigger picture of what the plot line was actually going on some episodes, and
It
just
was
wanted
really
them.
hard to focus on the plot line sometimes.
And I just like I liked them going on their little adventures and stuff like that. Like I think one of my favorite episodes was when Raven had to babysit these like three kids to like an orphanage for like kind of like their equivalent of like the X-Men and such, only to find out that, that's like the Hive and such. And
I was gonna such an episode. I only remember some of the characters getting roped up with like the Hive organization.
yeah,
Okay, that
yeah,
explains it.
yeah, and such like that. But obviously I didn't understand the bigger picture of why they were recruiting so many of these like one-off characters on the side, was because they were building up to like going against the brain kind of thing.
They had Teen Titans East. I really liked that.
Hmm. And such like that. But now as I grow older and stuff like that, and I'm watching shows where they quote unquote have like one-off episodes with these side characters and stuff, I understand there's probably like a bigger plot line going along the side. Like if I had to pick an equivalent of Teen Titans at the time to now, is probably My Hero, because My Hero has this obviously big overarching plot line of like Deku becoming a hero and such like that. But then there's also this big overarching plot line against All for One and everything
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
and such.
I
And
thought you were gonna be talking about like a more episodic series that you think still might have some overarching like story like behind it. Like I don't know, uh, I can't read the list of any episodic ones other than the early part of Adventure Time. It was just straight up episodic before they built
I
a story
consider
to
that
it.
more towards my developmental era and kind of thing and such like that, because that came out around the time when we were both like kind of in middle school and such like that. So
Middle school, getting ready for like high school, like in a year or two.
yeah,
Yeah,
and such like that. So I don't really count that towards like my latter half of it. Like where I cut off is probably like mid high school to be like maturing out, because puberty really sets in properly and such at that time, even though like you have your awkward years between middle school to early high school kind of thing.
like that Chuni phase, or just like in general
I
for
think
everyone.
I think in general for everyone, like we're talking about like a rough timeline of like your puberty starts around between these times, and then it really
Okay.
sets in around these times kind of thing and
Yeah, yeah,
such.
yeah.
For like me personally, about like halfway through high school towards the latter half of high school, I start like settling in for my maturity kind of thing and stuff. For me
Okay.
personally. And I think definitely I feel like at least how I take in the content has matured a bit, but maybe like the material itself hasn't actually matured. Because again, Teen Titans, the original series, was a very kind of like episodic but mature show to talk about the topics that they had. Like, hell, I think they had an episode where they talked about like Robin's PTSD against Slade and stuff like that.
That and Robin throwing hands with like an invisible ghost that was slayed. That was kind of a weirdly
Raven's
scary
PTS
yet funny
Raven's PTSD with
episode.
her dad.
Her PTSD with her dad, her PTSD with Slade, her
We had
PTSD with the end of the
we
world happening, or she
we
awakened her
had like
powers.
racism. We had the racism against Starfire within aliens and such like that. Beast Boy having to deal with his trauma from his original team before Teen Titans
I don't remember that whatsoever.
and stuff like that. That was the whole last season, I think, of Teen Titans and such like that. But definitely, like I feel personally like the material that I've taken in how I interpret it has definitely matured and such and everything. Would you say that is probably a good take on how it's changed as you grew older?
In my case, or commenting on your case?
In your case and such like that, like have do you feel the same that happened for you?
I feel like it happens to everyone, but the but the main thing to focus on is more like how exactly has it changed or developed? Because much like I guess cooking, you just learn to make the basics, but over time you then learn to kind of add more nuanced flavors to it
Mm-hmm.
that you probably didn't consider before. Because now that you're more older, you got some more experience. You can learn to appreciate like the finer things that you really don't think of immediately. So
Yeah, like
uh
the contrast of flavors instead of just having like one giant flavor overall
yeah.
and
So
such.
in my case, ooh, it'd be really hard to kind of like pinpoint concrete examples, but I mean, as a kid, for sure, Pokemon. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that a lot. SpongeBob as well. Let's go with SpongeBob because I feel like that's really gone like that's really aged a lot over the years. So I remember just watching those funny one-off episodic,
Yeah, we're
uh,
talking about OG SpongeBob, like where a lot of like the SpongeBob memes kind of root from.
99% of the SpongeBob memes come from like this era when I was a kid. And just watching them, that's funny. That's hilarious. I can't wait to see another SpongeBob episode as I was growing up. But over the years, I kind of just, go back and I just really like start to appreciate that meme a whole lot more. Like, oh, growing up as a kid, you're more like SpongeBob, but as you get older, you become more like Squidward. I can completely see how that is kind of like, just worked its way into becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. I feel like a lot of people would definitely agree with like, Squidward, his mindset of I really don't want the annoying guy to be like working with me, or I want to call in like, sick to work. I don't want to show up.
I am
I
trying
just
to
want to do the
vibe.
bare minimum and go
I
home
am trying to vibe through life and just get through the day.
with maybe not the best paycheck around from your boss, it really starts hitting it with like the real feeling of man, I'm an adult now. Now that I'm looking back at SpongeBob, I'm like, man, I really emphasize on a the same meaning the episode has, but just like at a different level. Now that I'm older and now that I have like more things to consider, this episode hits just as just as good, but it has more impact in a different way.
Uh huh.
Or I guess there are definitely other things with anime since this is,
Otaku
Otaku
Nightly.
Nightly Hour. Yeah. Um
I grew
for
up with
sure
Naruto. I'm gonna be very
I
upfront. I grew up with Toonami Naruto right before Adult Swim on Cartoon Network.
all right, so like the Toonami like on Cartoon Network always terrified me as a child because right around that time you'd also have like other shows popping up like Family Guy, Robot Chicken. None of those were my cup of tea. So I just kind of grouped all of that stuff together as that's bad. Don't stick around to watch it. Go over to Nick at Night. It's got that 70s
Watch
show
George
and George
Lopez.
Lopez. I don't understand what's happening. I don't care for it, but I just need to be on as I'm falling asleep because I'd rather sleep to that rather than sleep to something like Robot Chicken having, your favorite childhood icon of Scooby Doo getting murdered on screen.
You watch that show
Something that
too?
helps
You watched
sleep.
that? You watched that skit too? I did too.
I don't know. I think it happened at some point. It definitely happened at some point if it never happened,
No,
that I can
yeah, I
remember.
remember that.
But
I remember that.
yeah, none of those things I really want to like sleep to at night. So things like Naruto or Dragon Ball were just shows that really just kind of like offset me, and I was like, I don't really want to. watch these
Now
shows.
here's the thing. I grew up with Naruto because Naruto was the show that played exactly right before my parents came home from work. Every Saturday before we went out to have our nightly like dinner to go out
Nightly
to the
Otaku Hour.
yeah, that was my pre-Otaku Nightly Hour growing up and such like that. I would
Your
watch an
routine.
episode. I would watch an episode of Naruto before we went out to eat and such to the local taco place.
Let's say the local taco cabana. I was like, what? They had one? No.
No, no, no,
Um,
no. But like,
yeah, the local taco area thing.
yeah, because
Yeah, so
we lived in Texas. There's probably a taco place somewhere.
100%. But yeah, I really avoided those growing up as a kid, but as I grew older and it's like started hitting middle school, I started getting into reading manga, and one of them was Bleach. I ain't never seen the anime because again, it's kind of grouped in like in my mind as that like those shows I don't really want to watch. But I started reading Bleach. I binge read the whole series in high school kind of quickly. I was checking out like 5 to 6 books at a time, just blitzing through the series, really trying to like piece together like this whole new medium. Because prior to that, all I had was Pokemon as my quote unquote anime reference to kind of rely on.
And we didn't even
Um,
know it was anime because anime wasn't really a term that was thrown
a
around
genre,
and stuff like
yeah.
that. We just thought it was cartoons.
Well, I had it thrown around in my neck of the woods, although it was always more related to the etchy stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, anime is for adults and those adult stuff.
Yeah, that we
Then
see
what the heck
like
am I watching?
yeah, like Inuyasha and stuff like that, where they show where they're not like as kid friendly as and such like that. I understand what you mean, and
Yeah. So
I think I understand what you mean because definitely when I grew up and such like that, no idea that Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Bakugan, Dragon Ball was considered like anime at the time. I just thought, oh, this is just another cartoon and such. Especially because 4Kids made it very much like a cartoon because it was playing along with like other cartoons that was playing at the time and such. Which, by the way, yes, I am very well aware 4Kids also owned like some of One Piece, some of Sonic X, and some of Tokyo Mew Mew and such like that, along with the other animes that were playing on 4Kids and such like that, like Yu-Gi-Oh. But it painted in a way that it was very much a cartoon rather than anime.
yeah, even then, like I just took the shows for what they were and enjoyed them as funny action or comedic shows. Didn't really think too much about it until like the next episode. Then I would just fawn over the exact same things in the episode
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
again.
And the
But
first anime that I technically watched was Tokyo Mew Mew, like with the understanding that it was anime. But that's because I understood that it had a manga and then became an anime when I was in middle school. Because I think my first manga that I read was Dragon Knights because I thought it looked kind of interesting when I first visited the library from our English class and such.
okay,
And we visited there. I didn't have any interest to read like the other books at the time because I didn't want to read Harry Potter or Warrior Cats.
too many words, not enough pictures for me.
It's not even that. It was more like I had no interest for the actual plotline and such because growing up I had read like most of the books that were in my library in elementary school. Like I was that one strange girl reading all the Goosebump novels
I believe it.
and stuff like that. And there's a book series that I had growing up where it was like these like middle school elementary kids who thought some of their teachers were like monsters and stuff like
That
that.
sounds very familiar, but I can't put my finger on it.
And everything. I remember there's one that's like the camp counselor's a werewolf or something like that.
Was that a Goosebumps thing?
No, no, no.
I
Like
feel like that was a
a
Goosebumps thing.
completely different book series and such like that. Like the
Okay,
whole
because all I remember is
plot.
like the Zack Files or whatever, but I don't think that was it.
Mm-mm. But anyway,
Could have been.
like I was the kid reading. I was the kid reading the stuff that mostly the boys would read versus what the girls would read, and such like that. So I also didn't want to read like Harry Potter and the Warrior Cats in middle school, and I saw that in hidden in the corner. Which is weird because explaining it is like, oh yeah, I was in a dark corner where no one else was, and such like that, and like the light hit the light from the window hit it just right, where I saw a title called Dragon Knights, and I thought it was boy enough for me to be interesting. I saw these characters, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool and stuff." Only to be met with like gore and like fighting and stuff like that in the manga, and I was just like, "Yep, this is definitely what I would be into," because
Okay.
I was fully convincing myself I was a tomboy.
Uh, I kind of went like in uh deeper, not quite along the same lines as you, but also like in like the opposing side. Like I just like started like branching out in the amount of like content I would just be like consuming at that point. Because once I hit middle school, I had a library that had like, books, manga. I just immediately just started kind of like picking up some books here and there of many different types. And that's where I started to get the idea of, oh, anime is, you know, any media from Japan. So then in that case, yeah, sure. Pokemon is an anime. That just clicked in my mind back in middle school, and going into high school, I was like, okay, so what other types of animes are there that exist?
Mm-hmm.
For sure, one of them was High School DxD. Boy, was that a wild ride. But
Ah.
um, also, like I'd mentioned, Bleach. I read up on it. I technically finished the whole series, but if you were to ask me what happened in any arc, I will look at you and be like, I don't know. Chad, I think is Mexican. Hueco Mundo. That's all I remember
Okay.
because he kept calling up his names like in Spanish, and I was like, I like that. You got Aizen over here, who's got like his own bad guy army called the Espadas. I was like, I get that. I like that. And then he's got like all these other like names and powers in terms of like it's all in Spanish. I like this.
Yeah,
That's as far as
so
I understood it. I think Bankai was a thing. I don't really know what the whole plot was. I think Ichigo should have gone with that Shinigami who was like with them from the very beginning. Kind of weird they didn't, but that's what the story is. And now that I am a whole lot older, I can really look back at all these series I looked at, from everything ranging from like the etchy to the rom com to the more action drama packed things.
having a more expanded palette in a sense.
Yeah, now I can look at all that stuff with like a more expanded palette and be like, oh, I could probably have like more critical reviews of these series because I have some comments, I have some thoughts, I have some ideas, and it's really been an interesting development because now I've just kind of like learned an awful lot more of like what kind of other world fantasies do you like? Because there's isekai, there's like like the type where you are literally where you're dead and you're reincarnated in the other world. There's where you are just literally snatched away to a
Them
fantasy world,
exploring like the fantasy, like the expansive mythos of different like monsters and stuff like that, their interpretations and everything.
and that too. Yeah,
Definitely, I will have to say like Dungeon Meshi gets real creative with their monsters, but then we got like the traditional monsters such as like the sirens and such like that, that they're very different than your interpretation of like sirens that we have like in earlier content and such like that, like mermaids and everything, depending on like which
it's always interesting how they give unique takes on like fantasy monsters with like their own unique twist or their own modern twist. I know for a fact one of them was like what happens in the dungeon. We're not going to talk about what happens in the dungeon because what happens in the dungeon stays in a dungeon. But there's another one, interspecies reviewers. There's also Monster Musume, where they have like all these different ideas
monster,
as to what a monster or a like monster human character
a centaur's
does.
life and such like that, how they interpret like if monsters lived in like a modern era and such like that and everything. Like I really like that, but also definitely how it's changed my viewing experience is definitely seeing more of character development and seeing how different each author and creator wants to have character development per character and stuff. Like, because I am a self-proclaimed like romance slice of life fan, where I like seeing how characters develop and change over time throughout the story from how did they start, how did they end.
You can
And
really uh go into like a lot of, what are those type of series? Um those are really specialized hard on character development.
yeah, and such like that. But definitely like seeing that we're going more further understanding, like I understand what this character is going for and such like that, because I think as we matured older we have more empathy of relating to other people and characters specifically, because either we relate to them like they were like me, or we watch them long enough to understand how they got to that point because we've been following them through the story and such like that.
Yes. The main love interest died to only fuel their character development and nothing else.
Okay,
that's
and
that's my kind of story. Sign me the heck up, I guess.
okay, okay.
All aboard the pain train, baby. Woo, let's go.
As we talk about like how things changed since we watched growing up, would you say there have been like some consistent points of your of what content you consume when you were younger to now and such like that? Because I definitely feel like I've had some consistencies in a sense.
um Hard to say. I feel like it's mostly leaned away from those things.
Mm-hmm.
Episodic series. There's definitely a lot of manga that I've come across as like the four coma format, where it's basically just 4 frames, and then that's usually the end of the chapter, or it'll be like 4 frames of one page, 4 frames of the other page, and then that's the end of that chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It it really limits the story, and only gives them the opportunity to make more episodic formats.
Mm.
Unlike with shows like SpongeBob, I definitely tend to lean away from that because now I want a more consistent story that really kind of
You
like
want an
builds and
overarching plot line
expands.
rather than like single episode situations.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Anime definitely provides a huge repository like of content in that, like, field. So if you want something that just kind of really goes on and on, you can go with Detective Conan or One Piece, where they just really draw out the main part of the story and just leaves you kind of like wanting for more. Or you can have like a more like shorter story, My Hero Academia. That's already ended, and so you can really.
As well as like some other series that have like shorter plot lines. Like if we're gonna keep it to like a single season anime and stuff like that. Like for example, right now at this current point, as of this recording, Dungeon Meshi is one season at the moment. Yeah, there is another season technically coming out that they have already confirmed to continue the series. But like you could watch the whole first
Let's
season. You
go.
could watch the whole first season and have like a critical role related feeling where like one campaign's done.
Honestly, I believe it 100%. You find yourself in a dungeon. All your team members were forced out of it, and your cleric has died. Your new goal is to get back to the cleric, who, I depends if you're playing as Laos or not, is your sister, and you need to like get her back from the depths of the dungeon. How do you
Mm-hmm.
proceed? Okay, I choose to go in there and back into the dungeon immediately. No, really? No supplies? No food? No time to
Yeah, and
prepare?
such like
Nope,
that.
we're going right
And
back in there.
technically,
All right.
on a technicality, they did finish their goal about like halfway through the season. Technically.
This is very true.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I read the story. I didn't necessarily watch the story, so all I can say is, oh,
We're in for a ride, folks.
there is,
But like yeah, definitely
oh.
like we have like these long episodic series, and I this is kind of an older anime and stuff like that, but I definitely feel like we do have anime that are more episodic on the SpongeBob line of things. Lucky Star is the first one that comes up because I watched it just recently. I did a rewatch of it and such like that, but we definitely also have like the deer anime, the Shikonoko no Kono Dostanda.
Okay, so from what I understood, that show fell off once it actually started airing.
Yeah, because it's brain rot and everything. But that's the thing. That's the thing. It's very much a comedic episodic series, and such like that that just kind of goes with the flow, and there's no overarching plot line. And again, episodic SpongeBob and stuff like that and everything, and such. Like those do exist. We're not saying all anime is like, oh, you have to watch from season one and have like an in depth knowledge of the whole entire story and stuff. There are anime that are literally just for comedy and such.
I mean, I'm more interested. in the Void Century aspect of One Piece, I don't really care about like what the Davy backfight is or who this weird admiral is in this one random fleet in this one part of the new world. I couldn't care less about that character. All I care about is like the history that they like the world building that they kind of put into that series.
Hmm.
But for other series like the other shows to kind of look at, I mean, what's a show I can bring up? Uh Solo Leveling.
Hmm.
Technically anime, but it's from Korea, isn't it?
Yeah, but like the definition of anime has evolved now to be more foreign animation.
It's a really hard to grasp at kind of a story because there's is it anime or is it like, anime? So like it depends, but for like a series like that, I really enjoy the action-packed fighting scenes that they have in the show
Hmm.
and all the characters that they bring in and introduce. Great character design, great visual representation of just like the cities, the towns, the dungeons they go into. It's all pretty cool and I can really appreciate like, some of the more action-packed scenes that they have in the story, more so than when I was a kid. But when it comes to what genres I really like, I'd say it's definitely leaned more into the
Like
romance
away, yeah,
genre
like you've
with
leaned away from what you used to watch growing up and such.
yeah. So now it's like romance, rom-com, dramas, even like harems, but not as much. Like it depends. If it's like the 100 girlfriends who really, 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 really love you,
Mm.
sure, it's for comedic effect. It's to make fun of the genre. I'm down for that. But if it's like, oh, you have this main character, he's a really, really nice guy. All the ladies fall for him. He's great at everything that he does and is amazing. And more girls like really, really, really fall in love with him. Like, okay, all right. There's a limit to the amount of like, belief I'm willing to like, suspend at any given moment. But if it's just like not really like all that comedic and it's more along the romantic lines, then you've really lost me here, especially if there's not any drama involved in any of that.
Hmm.
What is it? Girlfriend is technically one of those. For
I,
like
I kind
it's
of
a little
agree.
comedic.
I could also agree with you that like my taste has changed drastically in terms of like leaning away from what I watch, but I can squint a bit about how I enjoyed the content is similar even when I was younger. So very much so when I was younger, I had like obviously a lot of people had like favorite characters and stuff from the shows that they watch and everything. And I definitely was very invested on seeing that character more often and such. Like for example, Codename's Kid Next Door. I number three was definitely my stand-in and such like that. So whenever her episodes where she was involved and stuff, I would like tune in to watch and such like that. Character development episodes where they center around a certain character and such, like in the Powerpuff Girls we have an episode that is revolving around Bubbles and such like that, or even like for example like in the later series that I did watch growing up and such, Disney's Good Luck Charlie and stuff like that,
Ooh,
and
okay.
everything. I was very much into the family dynamic of the of Charlie's family and such like that and everything. So I think as I grew up, that was still a consistent matter, but I think that's also like just in human nature where like you want to see character development grow and such. So I see that more with family with like the content that I watch. Like my Good Luck Charlie at the current moment would probably have been Spy Family and such like that, where it's very much an investment into the family and everything, seeing how they grow up and how they progress through as a quote unquote family and such like that. If I had to pick like a show that was very more action packed but revolving around a single character that I had very much interest to see going through, My Hero, um, Detective Conan's technically an old anime and stuff like that, but I didn't get to really watch it until like my again in my formative years latter end of high school and stuff like that and everything
I'm not
as
sure how
well.
someone could just watch that series for like so many years.
And then it's like but then it's like also seeing like what things have changed in terms of your taste and stuff. I could say that like I think one of the consistent things that I probably watched was Scooby Doo growing up, and here I am watching more mystery related content. Again, Detective Conan, and if we're gonna pick like outside of anime and stuff, my one of my favorite shows is Criminal Minds and stuff like that, Castle and everything. And it's still a mystery related.
Interesting.
It's a mystery revolving genre show and such like that. So I think that's some of the things that are still regularly consistent for me.
I feel like if there is anything, I can't really see that there's any consistency in
Mm-hmm.
how I've just kind of grown up with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more of things just get more and more complex in terms of the series that I like and I enjoy. And I mean, heck, even now I'm currently like reading this one series
Mm-hmm.
where it's like sure, there's romance. It's one of those isekai series, but it has a lot to do with city planning, politics, the dude bringing knowledge from modern day Japan over to this medieval fantasy world and really like helping I wouldn't say maybe speed up the technological development, but he's certainly making huge strides in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like I guess a really, really niche thing that I'm pretty sure not a lot of people would really like to watch or really like sit in and listen to. But that's just like kind of like one of the examples of things I've just been really getting into lately because of how much content it has that I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I um I'm studying for my PhD, so getting into more like that whole technical know-how, brainy stuff where they really like have to go into detail with a lot of things. Really just kind of like I guess
Appeals to you at the moment.
it appeals to me because I'm currently like, like I need to study up on the like on stuff. I need to learn these new techniques and I need to be doing all these new things and I'm like at the same time I'm just thinking to myself, what would humans do like a few hundred years ago? What would they be getting into at like at a certain point in their lives? Oh, they're like in their 20s and it's like the medieval ages. They'd probably be working like, for the state as, if they weren't working as a farmer or a laborer, they were probably working like in an office job. What kind of office job would that be like? What was the politics of that time and all
Yeah,
that?
it's very much different.
Complicated.
It's very much an improvement than when we were kids watching, like, for example, if we're going to use like a technological advancement kind of related one, is like instead of watching like when were younger, like Generator Rex and stuff like that, or like like I'm gonna pull the movie Meet the Robinsons and stuff like that, where we see like technological
Definitely meet the
advancements in the
Robinsons.
future and such like that. We never thought like, how did you get there and such like that. We're not thinking too far. It's just like, oh look, cool, flying cars, bubble transportation, tube to get us from point A to point B and stuff like that kind of thing. Time travel and everything and such like that. Those are all really cool and such like that. But we're not thinking like, but us watching it now is like thinking like, okay, how did they come up with that? How does it actually function and such like that? Would it actually function in the real world, or is it just like, like science fiction kind of thing? And
You say that all of that. The only thing I was like that I've been really like thinking back on is one, the dinosaur. Two,
you want the dinosaurs in that?
the peanut butter jelly machine that
It's
that shoots that at
consistently
the same
broken.
time.
It was
Those two things
consistently
have been like
broken.
living rent free in my mind for the longest time. And you ever hear time travel, all this like stuff, like all these considerations, all these things like
We
you gotta
have
talk about like none of
dancing,
those.
singing frogs.
The dancing singing frogs. I didn't think about any of those things. I don't care about any of those things. My mind's really just hooked on that peanut butter jelly machine, you know?
But like, yeah, it's like now we're thinking about it more in depthly
Now
about
we're
like
thinking with portals.
and such like that. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think one of the biggest things that has definitely changed since when we used to be watching anime younger to now watching anime is definitely the culture around it.
For sure. It should have been gate kept harder.
Hold on. No. Like, okay, like obviously, if you're from the early 2000s or even older than that and such like that, you very much well know that nerd culture in general has been kind of like frowned upon until recent years and such like that. And now, if you like anime, if you like video games, if you like any nerdy related stuff, if you're like someone who's still going to school and stuff like that and developing into an adult and such like that, that you're considered cool now and such like that. That wasn't the experience for us.
Say cool. I'd say just a whole lot more accepted. Like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, for
But
us,
are you still like?
for
But are you into sports? Yeah. Oh, I'm into sports too. It's like the number one pastime here in
it's
America.
just instead of being the main point and like the only label on you, it's just here's an adjective added onto it and stuff like that of who
Anime
you are.
fan. That's the adjective.
Yeah, and such like that. Versus us, it's like when we were growing up, it's like we're the weird kids that like anime and stuff like that. Like at least me, I know very vocally a lot of people considered me the weird kid and stuff for numerous other reasons on top of the fact that I was an anime nerd and stuff like that. Like I was one of the only Asian kids in the school and stuff, hanging out with nothing but guys and stuff.
I don't know what this we thing is. Don't lump me in with you. I kept my tastes and preferences for like anime
You were a closet
really
weeb
really to myself and maybe like my close group of friends.
until you
But
went
even
to
then,
until we went to college together and then you
well, high
joined.
school and then college.
Yeah, but like specifically, you came out more in college.
I don't know what you mean by coming out, but it's more like, yeah, I have an appreciation for these things, but I still like keep it to myself. I don't actively go out and tell people, "Hey, are you into like anime? Have you seen that
Well, no,
latest
no,
like
no, not like
episode of
that.
like you
That
know?"
I'm not the kid that was going up to people saying like, "You like Naruto too? Do you want to be friends?" No, that's not what I was.
No, but actually, now that you mention it, my friend was literally telling me this the other day how his girlfriend was working like at a store, and one of her coworkers there, like the new guy, just wanted like to make, I guess,
A
some
friend.
talk. Some talk. A friend was like, "Hey, have you seen that new episode of Jujutsu Kaisen?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." It's like, oh, and then like they kind of talk about something that happens in the show, and they're like, oh well, like what's that mean? Like, oh well, you would know. You have to go into the later episodes to understand that reference. Like, oh okay, yeah, sure. And then later, uh the friend's girlfriend like just kind of like comes back later and she's like, oh yeah, so about that show Jujutsu Kaisen. And dude's like, what? I don't know anything about that show. i, I've never heard about it. It was like, you were literally just talking about trying to make conversation. What do you mean you don't know about it?
That's just a
the,
guy.
the
That's weird.
the weirdest, like, yeah, case of I don't know you. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of that thing before in my life, even though I just told you about it like 5 minutes ago. Like, you lying, conniving little rat. That is that is not like. But the thing about it, the fact that we went out of his way and to just talk to you and be like, "Hey, do you like Jujutsu Kaisen? I like that show. I like this episode that like where this is happening." Like, okay, don't approach people out of nowhere and do that.
If you
But there
have
are
no
people that really do
intention
that.
to do so and such, unless you like go up to someone in a anime related or like geeky related store and stuff and you bring it up in topic and it's like sure, but you know, like
Sure, at a convention, that's fine. But like,
appropriate place, appropriate time kind of thing. But like okay, definitely like a little bit more it's been acceptable now versus like I think I'm gonna take from my own personal experience growing up for myself and everything. I was definitely labeled the weird kid reading like manga and stuff like that and drawing anime and everything, and a lot of people would be like very confused about like what I was doing and such like that and everything. But I think growing up I didn't get bothered by that much because at least I know like the friends that I was hanging out with that I knew just like didn't really care how weird I was and stuff and just liked hanging out with me and such like that weren't bothered by what I was doing and such like that. But there are definitely people who are like gatekeepy and such like that. I had an ex friend now ex friend, who just straight up just ignored me for like a good period of time after we were friends for like 2-3 years and such. Like keep in mind I had this person come over to my house when I had birthdays and stuff, other parties that we had at my house and stuff, ate at our house and everything and such like that. And after like a certain period they just decided that I was too weird for them. And this is the same guy who was like Naruto running across school.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who that person is, but still, pretty weird. But what do you mean gatekeeping? Like,
Well, like okay, like basically if I remember having cuz we were in the same program together and stuff like that and everything of like the education program that was specialized in our school. So sometimes some of my classmates would try to understand what interest that I had from certain video games and such like that. They would try to butt in and like ask them like, oh, how are into like for example, there was a time I was playing Fire Emblem, and I brought my DS, my 3DS to play Awakening and such like that, and I had finished all my work. I was playing it, and then classmate next to me was asking me like, oh, what are these characters and stuff, and I'm explaining who these characters are and stuff like that and everything, and he comes up and is like, oh, have you maxed out your character like this like he's talking technical stuff now and everything rather than just here's like Crom, who is the prince and technically the leader of the army that against this war against this evil overlord and stuff like that. I'm talking plot, he's talking technical and such like that, and is completely losing interest of the person that is asking me of all this, and is saying like, well, if you have no interest of like making sure your character is like maxed out to the proper build that they have, you shouldn't play the game. And it's like, no, everyone can play the game. They have a right to buy it. They have a right to enjoy it however they want. You could put Crom together with yourself as if you play female Robin and stuff like that. You could put Crom together with any other character and stuff like that. Or like you could just enjoy the characters and stuff. You don't have to play it at like max difficulty and like zero deaths and stuff like that. Just let people enjoy it and such. But he was very gatekeepy and stuff. That's like one example.
okay, yeah, he was being obnoxious about it. It's like this is only for like the elites to play. No, that's not what I think at all. I'm thinking more along the lines of um there's definitely been a lot of controversy in recent years about AI translating automatically from Japanese to English. Um and the main reason for that being some translators were inserting their own political motivations into some what
Oh,
is it?
don't get me started on the translations for 4 kids.
Yeah, so things like that. You can even use for kids like as an example of just translating and taking their own liberties from it and removing the original like content from the
Yeah,
source.
like the original intent of the of the material.
Yeah, I'm like I know for one of the things it was like with One Piece, like they for the 4 kids dub they had Sanji just have a lollipop in his mouth a good chunk of the time because you know
He
he's
can't
not
be
supposed to
seen
be smoking.
smoking and stuff like that. Swords are definitely not okay and stuff like that. It's just that but Zoro is the three. Is the
The three swords with them. Yeah. So what I mean, like with that whole gatekeeping thing, is like, well, um, people are starting to take their own liberties and do with anime whatever they want and publish it like as official things.
mm-hmm.
Fans are up in arms about it, and they blame this reason or that reason for doing all of this. But really, I think there's just too many chefs in the kitchen at this point. When really we only just like really needed like a small group of them to be handling and managing
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing. But now that there's too many people in there, there's too many arguments on like what should be done, how it should be done, why, where, when, and everything. And like that's where I'm thinking like, okay, things are getting too chaotic. We probably should not have had like let this many people into the genre to begin with.
But okay, here's the thing though. Is like now that we realize like cuz we have a better understanding of how it's created, how it's getting ported into the US and stuff like that. We have in a sense a better appreciation of how everything is made now and everything versus like back in the day. A cartoon. It's being made all the time and stuff like that.
Right, yeah. So now we definitely understand there's like a whole lot more of a process
There's
to it
people
and
behind it. There's
how
people behind it.
there's people behind it. There's thoughts and ideas and motivations behind it, and sometimes the pay is not behind it as much as it should be for some of the animators.
Sometimes
But
sometimes the motivation behind it is also not aligned with the audience as well. We have realizations of that as well.
definitely true. I know what for the Funimation translation for some of the anime that they licensed,
Mm-hmm.
they definitely took some words and misconstrued them,
Mm-hmm.
and that like really changed the meaning behind what some scenes were supposed to be. I think one of them actually were from like Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid when Luko was just talking about, I forgot what the context was, but it's just her saying like, "Oh, why did you change outfits from, being skimpy to like, a more clothed outfit?" It's like, "Oh, because it's cold," she says in Japanese. And I think in English, like, oh, just because I want to take a stand against the patriarchy or something else, like something completely out of left field is like, okay, well, I don't think that was the original
I mean,
intent.
like, there's also like the whole thing of like we've had changes in translation because of the fact that there are like some specific country related um like culture related
I love
standards.
me my jelly filled donuts.
Well, no, not that. I mean, like, okay, so for example,
No, yes,
definitely.
that 100%.
Well, okay. So definitely, like, if I'm gonna pick a more recent anime and stuff like that, we have a better understanding now that the work culture in Japan is very much kind of really hard and stuff like that, especially in office spaces. If we're gonna use a Gretzko, for example, and stuff like that, it wouldn't really translate over here because, well, we have a lot of states in the U.S.
We have
are at will.
standardized labor.
It's like at will states and stuff like that. Like you could get let go very easily, and you could quit as much as possible and stuff. Versus like in Japan, quitting is not an option.
You cannot quit. You pick a company, you stay with that company for the next 40 years.
Yeah, like the only like a lot of people think. I remember a lot of like people who are not fully aware of how the Japanese work culture was like in the first season of Agretzko was very much like, well, why does she have to marry to get out? Why does she need a man to get out? This was during the time of like I don't feminism and stuff like that. But here's the thing, for women especially and such like that, if you are not working, you are married. And such like that. Because other than that, you have no way to sustain yourself if you're not working in any function whatsoever. You have to be working in office or working any job in general, and such like that. Because you cannot be a stay-at-home person and such like that. The hustle
Yeah,
culture
it's
is like real
pretty
all the time.
pretty brutal, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm. And everything. Because then you get looked down upon as a single woman and such like that if you are not going for education and such like that and everything.
I feel like it's also for not just women, also like guys, anyone in general, when they're just being classified as a neat.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it boils down to. Like, well, as long as you're not a neat and you have a job and you're earning money, we don't really raise complaints about you or your lifestyle, what you'll really do,
Yeah, like you
other
could
than
spend all your
just
money on
why don't you
video
get a
games and stuff
promotion?
like that and everything. So, but like,
Yeah, as
okay,
long as you're working and you're producing towards like the Japanese economy, buy all the games you want. If you can afford it, do it.
but yeah, definitely our understanding now has changed because obviously, if I was younger and I got put a Gretzko in front of me and such like that, it's just funny animal cartoon, haha. A Gretzko does the yelling and everything and such like that, funny and everything. Here's a joke there and stuff like that, haha. But now, as an adult, obviously, I'm watching it. I have an understanding of work culture and such like that. Not specifically Japanese work culture, just work culture in general and stuff like that and everything. I understand like, oh yeah, I don't want to go to work. I hate
The only
this
thing
joke makes this like utter like great comedy and stuff. Like the comedy is going more now because I have a better understanding.
you say that, but the only thing that comes to mind is like that one scene with Danny DeVito where he's just crying. And he says, "I get it." That's really all it is. Is what you've been describing. It's like, I get it now. It all makes sense. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's essentially like how I feel if younger me was watching a Gretzko versus how I watch a Gretzko now and stuff like that. But definitely, I think as we grew up, our change on what we watch is definitely evolved and such like that, but that's definitely due to the fact that we have more of an understanding of what we're watching, both content in the show and content behind the scenes of making the show, as well.
I gotta say, I did not know there was an entire genre of office workers. That's a thing. Um, but I gotta say, my particular genre within that, office ladies, 100%.
Okay, I think
I will
that
not elaborate further.
I think that's a good summary about that question of like if our tastes change of watching anime compared to the shows growing up and such. I think most of our media as well, like not just anime, but most of the media as well has evolved since then and everything. And I could kind of say like it's been for the better and such because I don't know, me personally, since I'm in the process of writing a comic, slash creating a show, having a deeper understanding of like how the writing process of getting a point A, point B, and developing a good story, as I'm older, is definitely better. Because I've tried writing comics when I was younger and stuff like that, and there was no exact plot line going on. It kind of just did whatever I felt was cool based on what I was watching at the time.
That sounds like one of those like early 90s 2000s episodic manga. What was it? There was a few
I was trying to
stories.
make an overarching plot line in my old manga and stuff like that. It did not work and everything. And I'm not gonna bring it up again because I don't want to. I don't want to dig up that.
Relive.
I don't want to dig up that old comic. I'm gonna be fair and stuff like
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
But yeah. So, do you have any parting words to say before closing off?
Um, Gaslight Gatekeep Girl Boss.
No. All right,
That's the
everyone.
thing that's in, right?
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Otaku Nightly Hour. And if you have any suggestions about topics that we could talk about, whether it be a shower thought or just an expansive episode, definitely leave a comment down below. And until next time, everyone, you all have a lovely night. Bye bye.
All right, see ya.